If you dig into your soil, you'll find that there are layers. These layers are called the soil horizons. The first layer is called the organic layer. This is about 1 to 2 inches and relatively dark. The next layer is the topsoil. This is where the most biological activity takes place and where the plant's roots hold it together. It's quite porous, enabling good drainage. The next is the B horizon, or the subsoil. This is much lighter in colour, as you can see. As I am new to this property, I wanted to test out my soil drainage. First thing I did was I watered it thoroughly, and then I waited about 10 minutes or until all of the pooled water had drained. I then dug a hole and measured how deep the soil was moist. This was approximately 10 centimeters, giving around a centimeter per minute of water drainage. Helena and I then cleared the garden patch. We did this by removing any stones and pebbles, a lot of the other organic matter like sticks and dead leaves that had fallen off the nearby trees. I then used my gardening fork to help aerate the soil and break it up. I've found that often people don't realize how important not only water but oxygen is to the roots. If you overwater your plants, you can kill them, and this is essentially drowning your plant. And so oxygen is just as important for plant roots as water is. Then I arranged my dirt that I'd aerated into troughs and risers. This apparently increases the yield that you get out of your crops. And I did this personally because normally I'm a little skeptical on having at the back of your seedlings it'll say, keep plants 20 centimeters apart. I don't know, I'm a little bit skeptical to this, but I think by making these peaks and troughs it'll force me to space my plants out a bit more, which will probably be good and reduce competition. Then we watered it down just to help compact all the soil together. I personally love climbing plants. I think they're really cool. I think tendrils are fantastic. I think the whole mechanism that underpins climbing plants is just incredibly fascinating. So I knew that I wanted to have some climbing plants in my garden, so I made a little trellis. The climbing plants I went with are beans, which had these pink seeds, which I think are really cool. I planted these up next to my trellis that I just threw together made of twine. The next thing that I planted was this mint that Helena's mum had given me. It was sitting in a little box, and I wanted to use the little planter to plant some seedlings or some seeds. So I put this in the veg garden to see how it would go. I also planted some marigolds, and if you look at these seeds here, I personally would not look at those and ever think that those were seeds. Again, I think that's just really cool. The more you learn about nature and you see all the variety within it, it just gives you more and more appreciation for it. So yeah, I planted up some of these marigolds. Marigolds are, I think if you're going to plant in a veggie garden, plant marigolds. I also go on to plant nasturtiums. These two seem like the best kind of helper plants. The flowers help ward away bad or pests, and your slugs and stuff rather eat them than your veggies, so they act as a bit of a sacrifice plant. Yeah, definitely recommend. Then watered it all down, got a nice little rainbow in there, and then I planted up some rocket in that tray that I was talking about earlier that I took the mint out of. I wanted to practice some transplanting, which is why I planted them in here rather than directly into the garden. There's a thing called root shock, so if you do transplant, which is moving plants from one area to another, plants can undergo transplant shock, which means that you'll see inhibited growth. Generally, this is because the plant's roots are trying to re-establish themselves in their new environment, so it does limit the growth. But I figure rocket is quite a fast-growing, leafy vegetable, so it shouldn't suffer too much shock. Then I've got some broccolini, and you'll see I've got some lemons in there. This is going to be an ongoing theme. I hate cats. The reason they're in here is because cats keep pooing in my garden, and apparently citrus is meant to ward them away. One of the things that I want to do with these videos was to have a part relating to plants about some philosophical learning. And unfortunately, while I was doing this gardening, I was having a very busy week at work, didn't have enough time to actually stop and think about how my gardening and what I've learned applies to my everyday life. I'd noticed that I'd been having a lot of jinxes, and I thought about this, and then I go to one of my meetings at work, and we're given a reading, which is, the premise of it is about using marigolds, which is a plant that I've planted as a metaphor for surrounding yourself with good people. And just thinking about jinxes and how a lot of the jinxes I've noticed were relating to plants, I think jinxes are really cool. I think it's crazy how life put these things in front of you, and we have this strange ability to draw a connection between what would otherwise be two seemingly unrelated events. I think that is really cool, and it's one of the ways that we can remember just how special life is, and that we have this brain that's able to perceive these things in certain ways and draw meaning and connections between them. And yeah, that's just one of the ways that I draw my happiness and my wonder